Hi, I'm Barbara Hodgson and with Brian MacIntrye on camera, the date being the 24th of August 2019. I'm going to be talking to Ted Anderson about his long association with the Nelson Rugby Football Club, which extends back to the early 50s, wouldn't it be? Yep. For his contribution to the club, he was awarded the life membership back in 1971. He's married to Anne. They have 3 sons, Philip, Murray and Jonathan, and 3 grandchildren. Okay, Ted, let's first hear about where you were born and raised.
Born in Nelson and grew up out in the Lud Valley in Tyra, where my parents had a farm. Went to higher school, which in those days was a pretty small school. The school photo I've got, my last year there were 17 of us at the school, so no rugby played there.
Okay, no rugby played, right.
Yeah.
So your parents, what were their names?
Phil, or he's Philip, but known as Phil, and Mabel. And
so are they Nelsonians?
they're Nelsonians. We actually go way back. I'm 4th generation Nelsonian on both sides of the family.
Okay. And what was your mother's maiden name?
She was a Trask, and of course Francis Trask, her grandfather, was the mayor of Nelson.
Oh, okay.
So way back in the 1890s.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So. Right, so at what age and who was responsible for actually getting you interested in the game of rugby?
Well, I've been trying to think about that, and I know we used to listen on a Saturday afternoon to 2YA rugby at Athletic Park, and I presume that was Winston McCarthy that had been doing the broadcasting then.
Yeah.
But we had a football at school, but of course there just wasn't the numbers to actually play a game. Yeah. And it wasn't until I went to college that I started playing, in 4th form. When I was in 3rd form, we actually sold the farm, parents sold the farm, and we moved to Attawai, and I started biking to college. And I met up with John Park, who lived in Weaker Street, and we used to bike to college together from there. And in 1950, John and Don Spence were the 2 survivors of the 1949 5th grade team. The rest had all gone up to 4th grade.
Yeah.
And so he recruited me to play rugby for the 5th grade team then.
Okay.
So that was my start. The fact that it was Nelson Club was pure coincidence.
Just right, okay.
But one I never regretted.
So there was really no particular reason why you chose the Nelson Club. They basically chose it for you, really, didn't they?
Yes, they chose it and stuck with it forever after that.
Good on you, yeah. So you started in the 5th grade at the age of 13 and over a 7-year period played your way up into the senior team as a number 8. So did you play in any other positions at all during those formative years?
Well, it was rather interesting that I say I went up as a number 8. The first year senior, I see in the team photo I'm listed as a wing 3/4.
Oh, okay.
But I was something of a utility player because number 8 was certainly my preferred position, and I was reasonably quick and was able to get around the paddock a bit, so if there was a shortage in the back, so I was generally put out on the wing to cover that spot.
I remember Hoddy, my husband, saying that you were fairly fast, so he can recall that. Yeah. Okay, so as we all know, coaches do their best, and where would we be without them? But for you, Ted, during your playing days, which coaches impressed or inspired you the most with their coaching style, and any significant imparting words of wisdom before a game? Can you remember?
Yeah, well, I mean, the two who probably stand out most for me would be Alan Weechan, Ollie.
Yeah.
And he sort of impressed upon us, that was when we were playing third grade, that we were there to enjoy the game, and the best way of enjoying it was always to play our hardest,
Yeah.
Which I thought was a pretty nice piece of wisdom.
Yeah.
And the other one was Harry Scrimmager, who is our junior grade coach. And Harry and his wife, who's Mick Kinsett's daughter,
Okay.
they were more like almost a mother and father to us. And
Yeah.
Saturday nights we always went round to the Scrimmager's place, and they were in Pitt Street, and we'd be there until about 10:30 when he would kick us out. Some of us would go home and the others would go off to the dances.
Okay.
But they would be the two, not necessarily for their coaching abilities, but the two that really stick in my mind.
Yeah. Yeah. Sound like good mentors as well.
Yes.
So you were about 20 years old when first playing for the senior team. Did you find the transition to seniors more physically challenging?
Not really. I think it was more of a challenge moving from third grade to junior, because junior was an open grade equivalent to today's senior B.
Yeah.
And so you did strike some older fellas,
Okay.
and played it pretty tough. Whereas when I went up into the seniors, quite a number of the junior team, Don Fowler and I think Des Hodgson might have gone up a year before me, and
Right.
so I was actually moving back into my comfort zone of who I was playing with.
Yeah. Right, so by this stage you had acquired the nickname Stumpy, and I remember it well from Mum and Dad when living at home as a young girl. So is there a story behind
Well,
that?
yes, and it was Des Hodgson.
Oh, okay, my brother-in-law.
Your
that-
brother-in-law
yeah.
was responsible for that. And I think probably back in the 5th grade, or might have been 4th grade, and I had grown very tall,
Yep.
young, and I was probably almost a head above any of the other members of the team. And at some stage, Des referred to me as Stump, simply because I was so tall.
Yeah.
And that was where that one arose. And
Okay.
if anybody calls me Stump these days, it has to be an old rugby player.
Yeah, I can understand that, yeah. So once you began your senior years, were there players that had your utmost respect regarding their rugby skills, sportsmanship, or as a mentor?
Well, Noel Barton was the clear leader of that team.
Yeah.
We were actually a relatively young team. Most of us had gone up through the grades together. But there were some like Noel and Rex Curnow.
Yeah.
Terry Phillips was, and they were the trio and the forwards.
Yeah.
Bill Black, who's still around,
Right.
he was another one of the forwards. And the backs, Noel Damon was the leader of the back line.
Yeah. So Rex Curnow, did he make? Was he a trialist for the All Blacks, or did he?
Yes, Rex was a trialist.
Yeah.
I think Rex may even have played for South Island, but
Oh, okay,
Rex
yeah,
was certainly a trialist.
Yeah, I just recall because he's actually a relation to me through the Palmers, and there is a photo of him as a rugby player mentioning that.
Rex was interesting because he was something of a beanpole. He
was tall.
He was tall,
Yeah.
thin, but he was terrifically strong because he worked in the milk treatment station, and he spent all day lugging cans of milk around the treatment station. So he was physically probably the strongest member of the team.
So he would have had a really good core strength, I would say.
Core strength, yes.
Yeah. So in today's game, it's not unusual to see the forwards out in the back line time and time again. So did that style of play occur during your senior years?
Well, it was interesting reading about Brian Lahore, and one of the comments I saw was he was the old style corner flagger,
Okay, yeah.
and which was from a scrum line out. The number 8 was supposed to hit for the corner flag if the opposition had the ball in case somebody broke through.
Yeah.
And that I enjoyed that. And I think it'd be fair to say I was a seagull. Didn't enjoy the tight stuff, loved getting out among the back line.
Yeah, yeah.
And picked up a few tries that
But,
way.
yeah. So on a lighter note, tell me about the time that Litgar Julio, who was the coach at the time, took you off at half time because you were playing below your usual standard.
Yeah, yes. Well, it was a pre-season game against Rangers over at the Mootree, and I just wasn't playing very well at all. And because it was a pre-season game, he just took me off at half time, put somebody else on.
Yeah.
And when I got into the shower and looked at myself, I was just covered in red spots. And I had picked up chicken pox from your oldest brother from one of our Saturday night parties at the Bryden's place. And I thought, we've always one of those things you always remember. David sitting on my knee and the consequences.
So were you pretty sick with it as an adult? Or not too bad?
Not really. I think the fact that I'd been playing and I just came, well, it was a sunny day and it was quite hot, so I think that I'd worked up a good sweat in it, and the spots all came out together, and all right, I itched for a time, but I recovered pretty quickly.
Now, can you recall which win was your sweetest victory, which stands out above all others?
Yes, I can actually, and it was 1960, and I checked on that in the history, but we beat Old Boys in the playoff to win the championship, and I think Old Boys were probably expected to win it, but we beat them, and in the course of it I managed to get a couple of tries, so that game sort of sticks as the game that I remember most.
Right. So who were some of the players? Can you recall some of the players in the team at that time?
Yes, well, Des Hodgson was halfback. We would have had Noel Damon at first 5. Don Fowler would have been our fullback. Yeah. Ivan Guy and Murray Riak on the wings. Okay. We'd have had Noel Barton and Rex Curnow as locks. I think Tom Sharland and Doug Jones would have been in there. Yeah. Carl Tillin, Terry Phillips. So it was a good team. But I think Old Boys had Bruce McPhail as the All Black on one of their wings, and Cliff Saxton, who was a college sprint champion, on the other, and played a lot of games for Nelson on the wing. So they were pretty good. Yeah.
So were you still playing rugby when you transitioned into the administrative side of the club?
Yes. About the time I moved up to senior, I got involved more in administration. I see that I was custodian for a year, and then after that I became treasurer and held that position for a few years. Went off that, but stayed on the committee, and then took over as secretary about 1968, and did that for about 4 years.
Okay. So, in the past, was it difficult for the clubs to survive financially before it eventually became the norm for clubs today to rely on sponsorship and grant applications?
Probably not as hard. Because it was so amateur, we supplied all our own gear. Okay. And you had your own number for the whole year. So
you as individuals, you supplied your own gear?
As individuals, we supplied our own gear. And we were allocated our number at the beginning of the year, put that on the jersey, and that stuck with us. So we played, and I know for 2 or 3 years I wore number 8. Okay. The first year I was number 22,
Right.
and that would appear in the programs
Okay.
with our number alongside us.
So where did the club? So for the club to survive, to take over financially, the money just came from subs, I guess.
Subs
And just fundraising.
Subs, fundraising, and the bar.
And the bar, of course, yeah. Of course, the bar.
The bar.
always money and alcohol. Okay, so can you remember what year you actually finally finished? Because you were an auditor for quite a few years.
After I gave up as secretary, I don't know whether there was a gap at all then, but I became the auditor.
Yeah.
And carried on with that. I would say 30 plus years. I'm not quite sure when I actually gave up on that.
So that's quite an achievement, really.
Yeah.
Very, very loyal. I want to mention a bit about Bill Reid and Fred McCormick, who have. Bill passed away in 1973 at the age of 75, and Fred McCormick passed away the year 2000 at 84 years. And ask if you could possibly reflect a little on the personalities and contribution of these two past passionate club presidents, because they were a huge part of the history of the club before and during your time, and it would be fitting to acknowledge this during the 150th celebrations.
Well, Bill Reid, of course, was, I suppose you could say, dynamic in his leadership. And he was a good organiser, I think, really.
Yeah.
Whereas Fred was the man behind the scenes that did the work.
Mm.
And the centennial book, it was Fred and others who really spent hours and hours and hours at Nelson Evening Mail going through old papers to try and find.
Right.
But Fred was a real worker.
Yeah.
Fred had a good voice, and give him a few beers, and he was quite happy to sing.
Yeah, that's right. He was a good singer, wasn't he?
Yes, yes.
What was it? Oh, Danny Boy.
Danny Boy. I've been trying to think which it was.
Danny Boy.
Was Fred's song. So
that's right. Yeah.
But Fred. I admired Fred as he didn't seek the limelight at all.
Yeah.
He just did the work. Whereas Bill was always in the limelight, and he would take the credit for everything everybody had. But he was still like I was. But for all that, he really did work hard.
Oh,
he kept the club together for many years.
Yeah. No, I found a there was a presentation to Bill back in May 1972. So this was a year before he died. There was a tribute. Mr. Reid retired as president of the club this year after 56 years of service in all capacities as a player, a coach and president. Bill captained the Nelson rep team, played for the South Island and was an All Black trialist. So he was later a Nelson and South Island selector, included in his services to the club, of which he is a life member, as a book, 100 Years of Rugby, which is a history of the Nelson Club, as we just mentioned. But yeah, this is the bit I liked, he paid tribute to the support he received from Mrs. Reid during his long association with the club. It's always good to acknowledge the woman behind these men that do a lot. Can you recall any contentious issues that occurred during your time on the executive?
Well, of course, there was the amalgamation between Golden Bay, Motueka and Nelson, and that was fairly hotly debated, although I think from the Nelson Club point of view we saw it as something good going forward. One thing that did cause a bit of controversy, as part of the centennial celebrations or acknowledgement of the 150 years, the North versus South game was played in Nelson, and the following day a selection from the North-South game played the President's 15, and the club invited Ian Clark, who was at that stage an ex-All Black, but he was also a first-class referee.
Yeah.
And we thought it would be a good personality to have him as the referee for what was really an exhibition game.
Yeah.
And that upset a number of the local referees who thought they should have had the right to referee that particular game. But that was probably as much as anything. There was one interesting little thing from the actual centennial. Our guest speaker at the dinner was the Reverend Bob Lowe, who at that time was regarded as one of the after-dinner speakers around New Zealand. And he came up and he and the referee for the Nelson Club playing Wellington Club, and the referee happened to also be a vicar, had lunch at our place, and he said to me, well, this dinner tonight, are the press going to be there? And I said, oh yes, very definitely.
Yeah.
And it was the time of the 1970 tour to South Africa.
Yeah.
And he spoke out at the dinner and sort of said how sport and politics shouldn't be allowed to mix, and the All Blacks should be in South Africa.
Yeah.
And of course the sports reporter was there, and that made the headlines next day. And he blandly sort of said, oh, it was a private function. I didn't think the press would be there.
Oh, right, that was a bit...
So, but no, generally we got on pretty well, the club.
Yeah. So you were very involved in the club's centenary celebrations, during which an excellent book, as we're talking about, was published, showcasing the club's first 100 years. So tell us about the astonishing discovery you made when this book was being drafted.
Well, my oldest brother is 13 years older than me, and anyway, I didn't know until I saw a photo, actually in the book, that my brother had played for Nelson Club before the war. When he, at that stage, he would have been 19, 20, something like that. So he was a Nelson Club man, and I never knew it until I saw it in the book.
Yeah, I think that's just amazing, really. That that you never.
No, we might have talked rugby, but we never discussed him having played rugby.
Okay, yeah. So who was the chief, when that book was put together, who was the chief historian responsible for putting the book together? So would that have been...
That was...
mainly Fred, that you spoke about before, or was
Fred, I think Bill Andrews may have also assisted. They were the ones that did the donkey work to get the information, and then Bill Reid compiled it, and I think Arthur Swan, assisted him.
So who was Harold Swass?
Yeah, Harold Swass was an earlier secretary when I first started playing. Yeah. Harold was the secretary, and he was secretary for a long time, but I didn't get to know Harold all that well.
So how many years did it take to actually do that book?
I would think they were probably working on it for about 3 years.
Okay, yeah. So that would go pretty fast
as
well.
Yes, and yeah.
It's interesting. I remember the 100th celebrations because I was a 15-year-old daughter of Dad. I don't know whether he was club captain at the time. I'm not sure, but I remember because there was a ball and I was a debutant. It was the thing in those days, and I remember thinking, "Gosh, I wonder if I'll be around for the 150th." And I remember that quite clearly, and yeah, here I am, because I was thinking I'll be 60 coming up. I'll be 65. Yeah. So would you? I guess you would have thought that.
Oh, I had very much the same feelings. Yes.
Just.
And I would say we worked on the 1970 celebrations. I would say certainly for 2 years.
Yeah.
There was a lot of work went into organising that, because you remember it was no computers in those days, so it was all hand records and going through old photos, seeing who players were, and trying to track down people.
Yeah.
Gosh,
yeah. I mean, no social media. I mean,
No
social
social
media.
media,
I mean,
no.
everything would have been pick up the phone and ring.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or,
And toll calls were expensive back
Yeah,
then, so
yeah.
it was a lot of work went into that, and
I can
various
imagine.
people were sort of given the job of trying to contact the ones they had played with,
Yeah.
and it was a big occasion.
Huge occasion, yeah. Okay, so for you, what do you think now, if any, would be the biggest change you've noticed in the club from the beginning of your association versus to when you retired from active involvement?
Well, when I was playing for the club, it was very much, you could say, a family club.
Yeah.
And at least half the players in the senior team would have come up through from 5th grade right through to senior. And we used to joke that an All Black could come to town and he wouldn't necessarily get a game for the Nelson club.
Yeah.
But it seems very different now.
It does, yeah.
With bringing the players coming in from outside, obviously wanting to try and make their way up to the marker.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
It's
Just a
quite
sign of the times, really, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, just how it's evolved.
And of course the game itself is so different. You know, at 12 stone 7, I was still quite big enough to play as in the forwards, you know. Whereas today most of your halfbacks are that weight.
So how do you think you would fare today playing the game? You know.
Well, the biggest thing is, you know, I was an accounting clerk.
Yeah.
I'd sit at the desk all day, go out twice a week and do 2 hours training. Pre-season we'd do a bit of running up and down the botanics. But there's no way our fitness could compare with what they do today. No gym training.
No.
John Goodman was the first person I remember ever doing any gym work to try and get fit.
Okay. Well, there were no gyms around in those days. When you think about it, no gyms.
He just had a bit of equipment, I think, and did weights and things like that to get himself fit. But the rest of us, we just turned up after work and played. So I know one stage, one of the selectors I was having a beer with, and after a game, and he sort of said to me, "It's a pity I only played 10 minutes of rugby during the course of an 80-minute game."
Yeah. You can understand why farmers actually made good rugby players because of the physicality of their work.
Yes. And you know, we had somebody like, you know, Carl Tillin in those days, a physical working as a concrete.
Exactly.
And
bridge builder.
He was sort of one of those that stood out as being so much fitter than the rest of us.
What about women's games? Do you watch any of the women's rugby games at all?
Yes, occasionally. And I watched the women playing Australia the other night. I don't think I'd like to clash with some of those women, but they'd be a lot more physical than I ever was.
Yeah. I actually quite like the women's games because they're just that little bit slower, and to me it just seems a little bit clearer, I guess. I don't know. It's just that little bit different. Okay, so finally, if you could sit down and have a beer with 4 All Blacks, who would you choose and why?
Yes. Well, I think probably the first one now would be Brian Lahore,
Yeah.
in part because he was a number 8.
Yeah.
And because, you know, he's such a respected icon in the New Zealand rugby. And I'm sure that would be
Yeah.
good fun.
Yeah.
I would certainly pick Richie McCaw as one of the modern day good guys.
Yeah.
I think having a beer with Andrew Mertens would be a hoot.
Would be fun. Yes.
That would be
Yeah.
fun. And the fourth one I'd pick would be Nevin McEwen, who you probably not know of.
No, I don't know him.
But Nevin was at college with me, and he was an All Black during the 1960s. And I think probably as a sign of the times then, alcohol got the better of him. He has recently published a book, how he actually went to prison, came out of it, and his wife got behind him, turned him round, and
Okay.
of recent years he's been a prison visitor.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And I think just to talk to him about really the highs and the lows that can go with being an All Black would be very interesting.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that concludes our talk. And thank you so much. That was really, really interesting.
Yeah, thank you.
Brian, that was good.